All right, welcome back. iRacing VR Setup 2025. I've done a couple of these videos over the years, but iRacing changes, headsets change, computers change, and this is just an update for it. So just looking at a couple of cool cats right now, but in the description below is a link to Dave Cam. Dave Cam put out a video on how to reduce or eliminate stuttering. I've never had a big issue with stuttering, but it did rear its ugly head once in a while, usually at the worst moments. Um, so I did activate the setup that to eliminate it. I've been using it now for maybe about 3 weeks, and I have not had any issues with stuttering. Um, it is not a performance boost, but it is not a loss of performance, which is kind of inversely a performance boost. So I highly recommend that. Also in the description is my hardware if you are interested to see what I am running. So one important thing that's new, right click on your display, go into the settings. HDR is now available through here. So I'm not sure if this is a Windows update. I'm not sure if this is an Nvidia update or a monitor update, but this is now an option. So HDR in iRacing, I've always had it off. If the sun is low and HDR is on, I found the glare was just debilitating. You could not see much on track when you were looking directly into the sun. It did look nice, but that glare was just unusable in VR. Also, HDR in iRacing, having it on, is a pretty big bite in your performance. So, having this on through your display actually does not, I have found it has not affected performance. It does eliminate the option in iRacing to turn it on. So we'll go into that in a minute, but you can't adjust the contrast, the gamma, and all that stuff in iRacing because HDR is not enabled in iRacing. It is enabled through the system. Um, but you do get the good contrast. It does look nicer, but you also don't get that extreme glare from the sun. Um, so that is a nice perk, and as I said, I have not noticed any drop in performance having this on through your display. So click this on. It may give you a prompt on some adjustments for it, and also go into graphics and the graphics settings. Make sure your GPU is cranked up, variable refresh rate, and then as well you'll have to have these clicked on for that HDR to take effect. And you will know it takes effect when you click on iRacing, load it up. A little Windows menu will pop up and say this is HDR. Your HDR is on. So that is a real good trick. And then also go into your control panel and manage 3D settings. They'll have your global settings, which you may be using for other games and on-screen stuff. Go into program settings, select iRacing, and then you can fine-tune specifically for iRacing some of the settings. And one of the big important ones is uh, anisotropic filtering, however you say that. Uh, Turn that up 16 times, again, depending on your computer. But having this turned up is going to make iRacing look better without having to crank up the settings in iRacing, which then reduce your performance. So this is kind of a performance boost, as it will make it look nicer right off the bat without having to turn things up in iRacing. So you can look at these if you like. I'm not going to go through them all. I will just go down here slowly. Um, there's not much more important there to talk about other texture filtering, performance or quality. You don't want to go on to the extreme. High quality or high performance, those actually uh, take away some of the performance in the game. So quality or performance is your best bet. I do have the trilinear on. I can't say that that's hurt anything. Vertical sync off. That's always a good idea to have that turned off as well. And yeah, that's really about it in this portion. So we'll get into the meat here. So this is my monitor view that I'm recording in. I have duplicated my VR settings, but it will look a little odd because it's not in VR. It is a monitor. So one of the important things is when you are in VR, reduce this resolution. You don't want your monitor running it at full beams while you're in VR, because that makes no sense. It's not a game-changing performance thing, but you are going to get a little boost if you reduce this down to the minimum, which there's a whole lot of options there, but you can go through yours and reduce that. Res scaling, that's for AMD, so I am Nvidia GeForce, so I can't really talk to that. UI zoom, that's boosted up here for this video. I normally have it at 150% with my VR setup. Full screen, you want that on. Uh, Enable SPS. Now you have to check on your system. If you turn this on, this puts more work onto your GPU. So you can go into your GeForce and click on the monitor to see what your system is running, or if you've got a third-party one, turn that on, see what your CPU and GPU usage is. For me, my GPU is really getting maxed out. So I don't want to enable this. I want the CPU to be doing more work than what it is currently doing. I think my CPU runs around 40% and my GPU is in the high 80s. Clicking this on is just going to put more work onto your GPU, which is not necessarily a good thing, but again, that depends on your system. Reflex, oh yes, in that Nvidia control panel, having the boost enabled, you have to enable it in that control panel in order for it to have any effect here. Does this have any real effect? I can't really tell you if it's on or off. I have it turned on just because, but I can't say I notice anything really different with it on or off. So the thing we talked about here with HDR, the gamma brightness contrast, this is my monitor view, so HDR is enabled. It is not enabled in my VR. These adjust the HDR settings. If you are using the iRacing HDR, you can use these to adjust the display. But if you are using the display mode HDR, these will not do anything. HDR will be disabled. It will be blackened out here, and yeah, they won't do anything. So sky, I have it turned down low. I never look at the sky when I'm racing. Maybe waiting for the race to start, I look at the sky, but it is turned down. It's not a big performance eater, but having it turned down just gives a little bit more clearance at the top. Cars, high detail, yes. You want the cars to be looking nice. That's what you're going to be looking at on track most of the time. Pit objects, I have this at medium. Most tracks I could have this at high, but there are some tracks where the pit does really sort of bog down the system a bit, and you drop some FPS. So I just normally have it set at medium. I don't really notice the difference anyway. I'm not looking at the pits when I'm driving by, but I do get angry when it drops 5 FPS as you drive by them. Event, I have that at high detail. That gives stuff around the track a little bit more realism, so you can turn this down. It's not a huge thing. It just gives more, makes the track look more real, I guess. Grandstands, I have this turned up at high. If you are really struggling, you could turn this down, but I will tell you, tracks, if you turn this down low, grandstands will disappear and tracks look very different with this turned down low. It is really, you can see in the background right now, Suzuka, these would be gone. It really changes the feel and the look of a track, so I do suggest that you keep those on high. Crowds. Low detail is a one-dimensional, one-sided person. The back of them isn't really drawn. High detail is making the person drawn through all sorts of different angles, and medium is making them look from the track side normal. Having it cranked up, is it going to eat a lot of performance? Possibly, but having it at medium, you're not going to notice any difference. You don't need it at high. At low, even low, you can have it on. You'll still see people in the stands, but really, how much detail do you see when you're on track anyway? Objects high detail, yes, you want that. Um, Things on track, um, they will be missing if you have this on low. And some tracks, uh, Catalunya comes to mind, Okayama comes to mind. If you have this turned down, some objects on the track disappear, and I use those objects for braking markers or for turn-in markers. So I do suggest you do have that turned up. Foliage is really just to make things look pretty. You don't need it on. High is very hard on your system. Low takes a bite, and medium's kind of a happy medium. You do see it more than low, but it doesn't have the performance drop of high. I do like to have it on. Give it a try. See what your system does, if it really bogs down or not. It does make the track look nicer. When you're looking at cones, braking markers, uh, curbs, things like that, you see three-dimensional grass. Not just flat grass. You see grass sticking up around the markers and this and that. It does make it look quite nice. Particles high, yes. Um, you, the dirt, the sand, all that stuff. You want to see that getting kicked up by the cars and on track and things like that. Full res, again, tires locking up and things like that. You want to see that. It's pretty important to the immersion of racing. So have that turned on. Max cars. So I have it set for 4. Uh, is it a big performance boost or loss? I can't say I've noticed any huge difference with this, but I do have it set for 4, because on tracks certainly that are a little harder on the system, this is going to help. So every little bit adds up eventually to a lot. Dynamic load, I've played around with this. I have not found it to do anything really, honestly, in terms of performance. Frame rate limit, I have it at no limit. Um, if you are struggling, if you are stuck around 85, you may want to turn that down to 85 so that it doesn't occasionally pop up to 90 or whatever your headset may allow, and then drop back down to 85. It may keep it a little bit more even keel, so that is something you may want to try. Vertical sync, you don't want that on. It will give you less accuracy in terms of what you're seeing and what you're doing with the wheel and the brakes, excuse me. So one of the new ones here for 2025 is they've changed this section. So the anti-aliasing method, these are the 3 that are available now. Depending on your headset and its resolution and its performance, um, you may want to play around with these a little bit, but for my headset with a higher resolution, the FXAA and SMAA look awful. If your resolution maybe isn't as sharp, um, those may work well, but I found the MSAA really is significantly better looking. So I'm going with the MSAA, and then you have the option of soft, neutral, sharp. I did not actually try simple, just because from the description it says it's probably the least optimized. So soft is going to noticeably be a little softer edges, so on barriers and things like that, they aren't going to look as jagged. And then on the opposite end of that, sharp, everything is very, very crisp. However, it will show more jagged edges because it is so sharp. So I've actually opted for neutral. I find that's kind of the sweet spot. It does make things look crisp, but also not quite as jagged as sharp. Uh, Also, a performance bump. Sharp, I do find, eats up more performance. Uh, Soft and neutral, I find, are they're pretty much the same in terms of performance levels. Now, once you decide on which one you want to use, then you go into the samples. Now, this one is a big eater in performance. Having it at 8 uh, really does take a bite out of performance. Most tracks I can get away with 8, but some of the newer tracks, especially 4, is where I have to be 8. 8 runs into trouble. 2 is too low. 2 is not going to look good. So try and get it so you can use this at 4, and 8 is even better. But I don't want to turn any of these other options down in order to achieve 8 on some of the tracks where I do have to turn it down to 4. And the other thing I did try out is having, instead of neutral, using it soft and using 8. That did not really give any sort of boost. The two, 4, or 8 basically have the same sort of performance usage whether you're using soft or neutral. And as I said, sharp does actually drop performance a little bit more. So that's something to check on. Object self-shadowing. This one is terrible. This eats a lot of performance. This will, so say you're driving a car with a front wing, this will cast the shadow of the M plate onto the wing or onto the track. It is such a minor visual thing, but it consumes a lot of performance. So I really suggest you turn that off. It is not good. Night shadows. I don't do night racing, so I can't really speak to those. Walls, yes, that makes things look a little bit more realistic with shadows from the walls. Number of lights, I have it at 1. If I have it at 3, which is I think the recommended one, could I tell the difference? No. Uh, is it a big difference in performance? I can't say that either. Um, but I have it set low because really I don't notice any difference from 3 to 1, so I just have it set lower. The filter. Now, you can have no filter, you can have 16. This is pretty minor performance losses or gains. No filter, it is going to look, the shadows aren't going to be very good, but a 16p filter, probably the shadows are smoother, but in an actual race, are you going to notice that difference? No. So I've just gone with the minimum of the high-end filters. Uh, Honestly, unless you're taking screenshots, um, you're not really going to notice that difference. In a live race, you can't see the shadows that closely. The cubes, I still have no idea what these actually do. If you play around with them, though, it is just going to kill your system, your frame rates, your appearance. I think this is for future use or something, or it's an old system that's still in there. Shader quality, high detail, ultra. Um, Again, in a race, are you going to notice the difference between ultra and high? Nope, you're not, but it will eat up some performance. So go with high. Hide obstructions, again, that depends on the car you're using, whether or not you're going to see the halo, things like that. Two-pass trees, definitely you want that on. Uh, it is going to make the trees look nicer. High quality trees, it I have played around with this a little bit. I think there is a little bit of performance loss with high quality trees on. If you are struggling for performance, turn this off, because honestly, you're not going to notice that difference when you're racing. If it's on or off, I should actually probably have it off anyway. Cockpit mirrors, if you want the side mirrors or your in-dash mirror to be on, make sure you have this checked. If you don't have it checked, those mirrors are just going to be black. It will give you a performance boost. So if you're really struggling performance, and you have to ask yourself honestly, do you actually ever look in those mirrors, and how often do you do, or do you just use the virtual mirror overhead? You can turn those off and definitely gain some performance. However, it will make the car look a little weird with blacked out mirrors. Details in mirror. No, 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 no. If you're looking that closely in your mirrors, you're probably going to be crashing into somebody. So don't have that checked. That is going to eat some performance up, and it is completely useless. Headlights. Again, I don't do night racing, so I can't really speak to those. But obviously, the higher up they are, the more performance it's going to use, and you're going to have to decide whether or not you can use those. Headlights and track mirrors, again, same thing. Having it on is going to look more realistic, that is for sure. If it's a night race, you certainly would need that. Now, virtual mirror. Um, if you're using the virtual mirror, the higher this number is, the further back, the more distant cars are going to look. Cars are closer than they appear the higher this number is. So if you're looking in your mirror and there's a car that's 0.2 behind you, but it looks a mile away, that is because you have this turned up probably higher. If you want that car to look more realistically like it is 0.2 seconds away, then lower this number. I use 90. You could probably use 80, but once you go into the hundreds or more than 100, cars look very distant. And if you don't mind that's absolutely fine. That's a personal decision. Motion blur. No, no, motion blur. I'm in VR, so I don't want that or need that, and it probably does consume a lot of performance. I've never experimented with it because I am in VR. SSR. Rain is new to iRacing, or somewhat new now. Um, I find rain looks pretty darn good with these settings. Um, this is going to definitely eat performance up like crazy. I have turned it on. Um, does it look a lot better? Is it much better? I don't know, but I know it certainly does consume a lot of performance, so I do have it turned off. Sharpening, that is a must in VR. Monitors probably as well, but yes, sharpening you do want on for sure. HDR, as I said, if you're using it through your display, this will be blacked out. It won't even be an option. The SSAO, again, turning this on is a pretty good drop in performance, but honestly, the shadows and stuff, when you're driving, do you really notice that? No, not for me. So I recommend you turn those off. Distortion, heat haze, again, they're nice, pretty things. Um, Depending on the car you drive, most of the cars I'm driving, usually it's Formula Ford or Skip Barber. I don't even notice these things with those particular cars. Now, if you're using a different car, if you're in an F1 car and a GT car with a big engine producing more heat, perhaps there is more noticeable effects on screen, but I have these turned off. They do eat performance, whether you see anything or not as well. They do drop your performance. So I have these turned off. Video memory swap high-res cars, yes, this is going to give you a boost in performance. Having this turned on, actually it does give you a pretty good boost in performance having this turned on, having this checked. So make sure that is checked, because honestly, again, if you're looking four or five cars back in your mirror, or four or five cars past you, in front of you, you can't see them that much anyway. So having the three closest cars is certainly plenty enough to be looking at. Having uh, the higher texture cars on, this again eats up performance a bit. It's not critical, but it does definitely give you a performance drop. And yeah, I mean, with this without this checked, cars to me look quite good on track, but again, that depends on your headset and the resolution that you're running at. but this one is probably on the bottom of your list to turn on. Hide car numbers, well, that's for trading paints. So that's the settings. If there's something, a suggestion you've got out there that I'm doing wrong or could improve on, certainly leave a comment below. If you have any questions, certainly put out a comment. I'm good at getting back to most comments, whether I have an answer or I don't have an answer. And hopefully this helps with your VR setup. We'll see you next time.